Welcome back to the part 3 of this session. In this part, we shall try to explore the results for all the patients who have been reported with gastritis and see what insights we can gather from this data. Before we move on to our studio and looking at the code to explore the data, let's step back and go to the MySQL workbench to identify the concept class which would tell us that the observation is a lab result. So if we go back at the start of the introductory session, I'd identified few tables and their columns. So one of the table was concept class. So if we were to do select star from concept class and execute this statement, and if we scroll down, we can see that concept class with ID 26 represents lab test. So this would mean that in the observation table, all the entries which has concepts for which the concept type is 26 would belong to the lab test results, and given that order ID is not null for those observations. So having looked at this schema, let's go back to our studio, and before we start exploring the observation results, let's look at the gastritis trend across the top 5 cities. And if we look at it, one thing which stands out is that in each of these top cities, females are having higher percentage of gastritis, close to maybe around 70% and even more. Like in city 3, it's maybe 85% or 80%. So maybe it's worth investigating the results of female having gastritis to see if we can possibly identify any insights or any trends in their lab results and why they seem to be having more gastritis. So let's go back to the R code. So what we are going to do is we are going to again pick up the data frame which had the diagnosis data and filter it for only the gastritis data, and from that data select all the people and their gender having gastritis. So once we execute this, we'll have the set of patients and their gender who have been diagnosed with gastritis. And then what we will do is we will go to the ops table and try to fetch all the concepts having class of 26 and try to combine with the patients having gastritis by doing an inner join on the person ID and trying to get the value numeric and value text where the lab results are stored, or either the comments column where the lab results might be stored. So once we execute this would fetch all the lab results for patients who have suffered from gastritis. Now here comes one more challenge that the data represents, especially in this medical field. The validity of a lab test or in any scan or any test which has been done on a patient need not be limited to that particular encounter or visit. A particular test like an hemoglobin check done before a couple of months or 3 months might be still valuable for us in doing this data analysis. So what is the time frame for which we should look for the results for those patients who have been reported with gastritis? So that is something that we need to closely understand from a domain perspective and take a call. Right now I'm looking at all the results for the patients who have been diagnosed with gastritis. Maybe we'll have to look at, say, plus or minus 2 to 3 months time frame in the duration by the time they were diagnosed with gastritis. Between the 6 months duration, in that time maybe we should look at all the lab results, but it clearly depends on case to case basis. There might be some test results which might be even done a year back which might be useful for our analysis. So this is one other area where we cannot confine saying that the lab test done on that particular encounter and visit in which they were diagnosed with gastritis is only helpful in our analysis. So this is another challenge that we need to resolve as we move on if we want to make more sense out of this data. So I have already executed this statement, and if you look at the lab results, so this fetches all the lab results for the patients who have been diagnosed with gastritis. Now once we do this, we can see that there are various tests which have been performed, maybe an hemoglobin check. Quickly scrolling through this much of data might be difficult, so maybe we want to see what are all the tests which have been performed on patients who have been diagnosed with gastritis. Would be to just say that give me unique values of, so this gives that for all the patients who have been diagnosed with gastritis overall, so many tests have been done. So this would give us a quick overview to see if any particular tests are of our interest. So given that we have observed that females are having there are 70% of female who are having gastritis in most of the cities, or in the top 5 cities at least, we say we want to look at some of the tests which might give us more insights as to what could be the reason. So maybe some of the tests that I have selected over here is to see whether it gives some insight is if there is any ulcer and there is some blood leak which is unknown, which might be visible using the occult blood test results. Maybe there are some liver issues in the female, so maybe there are some ova cysts in the blood of the female. So these are some of the important tests I thought might be helpful to look at to see if we can identify any correlations. So further on, what I have done is that I have filtered these lab results which had results for all the patients, both male and female. So I have tried to put a filter to only concentrate on the female patients. And further on, what I have done is from all the test results that are there for the female patients, I have tried to concentrate only on this important test results. So this variable ops important test results has the result values for all the female patients for this important test results. So if we were to execute these statements, we can look at the ops important test results. So we will see that the next challenge is that there's no consistency in terms of the same set of tests being done on all the females. So even to get a consistent data for this test across all the patients having gastritis is kind of difficult. So if you look at it, for some patients SGOT test has been done, but for some patients it is not done. So this is another challenge wherein, given that it's a low resource area where this might be in use and not all tests are performed on all females having gastritis, it again also depends on the diagnosis and what doctor thinks based on the history. Also, given that females primarily might be from villages, looking at their dietary habits, looking at their staple food, looking at their timing of meals, or whether it's only gastritis or colitis, maybe due to worm infestation. There have been a lot of things which have to be gathered in terms of data to make more sense out of this data. So also we may have to look at purely from a socio-economic status whether taking excess quantity of citrus substances might be a reason why a lot of females might be having this issue. Also, any stress or mental agony or too much of workload, that there could be a lot of things. I mean, we started off looking at only the liver results, liver issues in female, or the unnoticed blood in stool, which is the occult test. But there could be far more issues which could be prevalent, for which we may not have the data right now with us. So looking at this important test results, what I found is that out of all the patients, maybe for some tests are done, for some others are done. So I could not find any correlations between this important test results and the reason why they are having gastritis. Maybe to take a step further, what I did next was to see from this important test results, I wanted to only concentrate on the occult blood test to see if that is giving us some indication. So what I did was, from all the important test results, I filtered on the occult blood test with a value of positive. So let's see what data that gives. Even there, if you look at it, only there are 12 patients out of the entire patients which we have, the lab results which we have, only 12 have occult blood as positive as true. So not a major or any majority of cases of female having this occult blood test as positive. Then I picked up Helmin positive cases to see if that gives us any indication, to see if patients having occult cases and are having any particular correlation, whether they are having this Helminth positive also. So if I look at it, over there, not the patients having occult as true, uh, but they do not have the Helminth results as positive. If you look at it, NAD means no abnormality detected or no organisms found. So, so to see if occult positive also gives us a good indication of helminths being present, we could not succeed in this particular case, at least with the data that we had. So with this exploration, we see that while we have a lot of data, but we also need consistent data for us to make sense, and we need more data other than only lab results. Like, we need to know their food habits, we need to look at their staple diet, we need to look at a lot more other factors if we want to find out why around 70 to 80% of females in most of the regions are having gastritis.